The following message is brought to you by the Greenhouse Neutral Foundation.
The Letters from 2030, The Future We Must Change.
This is the first letter in the series, Letters from 2030, soon to be a syndicated radio program in the United States. This is dedicated to the future that we must change. A call to hope. Well, it's now January the 1st, 2030. Thanks to all of you for your daily hologram letters. I look forward to them every day. There seems more time in the day these last few years to put my thoughts down and to keep in touch with a few of you that are still left. Sadly, many of my friends and yours have fallen by the wayside, their homes swallowed up by advancing deserts or inundated by sea level rise. Some have succumbed to starvation and lack of clean drinking water, and many of them to disease. I know a few must have survived by moving to the remaining isolated areas that can still support life, but many have lost contact, and I fear we will never hear from them again. As I sit down this New Year's Day to write this letter to you, my friends, I look back on the last few years since the publishing of my book, Zero Greenhouse Emissions, The Day the Lights Went Out, Our Future World, and I ponder what more I could have done to change the future with a sense of sadness. Then I was only 56, now I'm 77. I've reached what they once called 60 years and 10, and passed it by a long 7 years. But what a time it has been. Years have passed since the hope of our planet hinged on this or on that politician being elected to make a change, but none did. I remember in 2009, when the first African American president was elected to the United States. President Obama, just like my hopes and dreams, have passed into history. They say that the mistake he made early on was to focus efforts on trying to save an economic system that was inevitably designed for demise. A system that relied not only on preserving the way of life of the American population, that could not be saved under the way that they had lived, but missed the point that these issues were transitory, but the climate crisis was not. I look back now with sadness that all were listening to today's problems, but ignoring those that would strike tomorrow. We had the chance back then, but failed. I thought if enough woke up, bought my book and realized the truth, then we would become the army of concern for a safe future that would change our future to one that was not finite. As I sit here now, I'm saddened that we missed that opportunity. We will more than likely be described by those that survive this time in the short history of man as those that could have made a change but could not be bothered. Those that could have made a difference but just didn't care about others. Those that could have saved humanity but just kept on consuming. Those that could have secured a safe future but just kept bickering about who should be first. Those that could have saved humanity but preferred to go shopping. I don't know what more I could have done, even now, looking back on the last 21 years. I don't know what more I could have done. In 2008, when I wrote the book, I thought I could make a difference. I pushed for every mother of every child, every father of every child to read it, to understand how we were putting their children, not just theirs, but mine and yours, in peril. But they were deaf to the pleas. I, as with many others, worked tirelessly to wake them up from the illogical sleepwalk that they were on. But they slept on. Many of these other crusaders for change have now gone. I still lament the passing of James Lovelock, Al Gore amongst others. I miss their wisdom and their passion. So here we are in 2030, with the outcome of our global sleepwalk and that of our political masters back in those days. Here we are in a world of irreversible climate change. Here we are in a world of atmospheric concentrations of CO2 equivalent of 1,000 parts per million, at the level of 55 million years ago, at the level as we are seeing now where all ecosystems have failed and only a few of us still survive. They say there may be as few as 200,000 of the 7 billion of the world's population in 2010 left by 2050. I know I won't be one of them. It's amazing looking back that we fell for the claims from industry and from the world politicians that we could go on as we had, and there would be no outcome to our lives on the planet. I know many of at the time believed these messages and went on as they always had. Sad, isn't it, that so many have died because of this ignorance and complacency? I remember in the first decade of the 21st century, when they saw the polar regions heating up at 3 times the average globe, the average level, and they just said, well, further evidence was needed before verifiable scientific reports could be presented. And then the West Antarctic ice shelves collapsed, and they said, well, we thought they might. Millions perished. I remember at the same time when they were telling us that the permafrost in the Arctic was melting and would release billions of tons of methane into the already overburdened carbon pool in the atmosphere. But no one listened. I remember at that time when we were at 390 parts per million that the world had been a very different place when the levels had been that high before. We knew that at 390 parts per million in 2008, the concentrations of CO2 were almost identical to those of the Pliocene atmosphere 3 million years ago, and that global temperatures then were 3 degrees higher than the average in the first decade of the 21st century. But we just went shopping. So we let emissions keep rising, we allowed the polluters of our fragile planet to keep polluting, we allowed ourselves to keep going on as we had, and then it hit. We didn't think it would, but then, as they say, shit happens. I'll write tomorrow. Stay safe, stay indoors. Much hope to you all.
Zero greenhouse emissions. Find out why this best-selling book on climate change by author Bob Williamson, founder and chair of the Greenhouse Neutral Foundation, is so highly controversial. It's the information they don't want you to know about. Get your copy at www.greenhouseneutralfoundation.org.